6, so I will get into it here. All right, just gonna tilt my glasses a little bit. Uh, I stopped here, so I'm gonna pick up from here. When I was reading this, I'm bleeding the stories together, so I have to have the word after here. Uh, I've done that in quite a few places. Look, decide. Yeah, it's better descriptive as the word decide here. You will decide on their own, to our own, look to our own. I decided this is the way the text should read. This is going to be, oh, that was the one that was mashed up above. Uh, some of this text I was using parts of to go into others, where this one was the only thing out of the story. I think that, no, I got some more here. Then the story here will start up. But a lot of this stuff here is already being said differently above, so no needs to keep that text around. And then I'm pretty sure that I was trying to put the stories together to read smoothly, and that's what I came up with. I had to put the word calf here because I didn't want um as a large object, because this is also the same thing that they made in the Sinai. So it would have been a sign, a calf is yet still gentle, but going to grow up to be strong is the way you would interpret this. So the thing here is I didn't want the full ox drawn there, but being this type of image given, um, so this was Jeroboam's um, deceivement against his own people. This is why this city, when you see people say Church of Bethel, well, it was actually a pagan church. Okay. So I don't know who the hell come up with the idea that I'll start a church called the Church of Bethel. This seems to have moved up from another place that I had it located. There's text I'm getting rid of. Small corrections that were needed. I did change it from it's kind of odd because he would have been a leftover. Most Levi's went to Judah when this started happening. So that's why I put a diviner, to make it different than what I think it was. And now I understand that from the reading the story probably a dozen times, it's more better to have it as a Levite who would understand the way of a prophet, who would understand some of the laws and what uh, would be known by a Levite being brought up truthfully, but maybe one parent was more stronger than the other. But the other thing here is I wanted to make him a Levite that was still left in Israel. I had to change it from time to time to keep going. The word warriors because I got rid of the word sane because it came to Ahijah. Um, I needed more in this text to understand that he's going to be destroyed. And then because this becomes the two grouped, this didn't make any sense because this verse here, I actually got tied, I believe, Gotta check that. Check that. Make sure there's another verse there. I thought I'd done that, got rid of that to tie it because I've got the comment. There's no reason to keep this. Uh, so I thought I had tied it with the next 3 verse down. That's why I got to check on that. But like I said, I missed some editing in here, so that might have been a spot, maybe not. This is how I'm going to group the chapters together because this is going to be all one subject pretty much, or one story as it goes through. But you're getting an idea of here that I started putting these in at this time. And um, it was to help me locate the text as well. Go away, you see her. I wanted to make sure it was not just go, but get out of here type of thing. So I added a word there. And then put that hyphen in it to mean that this is one word that I'm putting together as the meaning for that one word. The 2 important words in the verse, like this here, 1, 2 here, there, basket, appear, behold, angel, YV or Yava. Yeah, skip down. Yeah, they would have been Orthos advisors when the story gets put together. Here I had to put the word ox to keep up with the word calf that was here. So that's, I think I might have corrected this before I corrected the other one, and then went back up in the text to correct it, wanting to make sure that the same words were being used. And finally, maybe the text is revealed that it was ox calf, and we don't have a single name for that. Uh, should mention that I would realize that these are 4 verse, and I had a 5 verse in there. So now you understand why it took me so long to do this. I tried to really examine everything. Um, so that's kind of, I'd read it and kind of make sure everything was okay. Then I'd go read it. So blocking the Judah, yeah, they weren't laying a siege here. They were kind of blocking so on the roads that you couldn't get to Judah. Okay, and this was the next king after no, this was Jeroboam's son, who only lived or only ruled for 2 years. I think his father was before him. So no, it was okay. Yeah, his son's gonna kill this guy. So this is the guy that actually was around for 2 years, but it was this blocking that laying siege to it. That was just the wrong word to be used. Okay, I had to move some text around to get it in here, and then I'm gonna move it all together. Uh, like I said, some of these were very confusing, and when you're fitting them together, it was this thinking that this has got to go somewhere. The story is there, so I'll put it here, and I have to change a few things to make it fit with the story at that time. Um, going out, bleeding, easy. Stood to ask cities to land. Um, I wanted to make sure that it was the lands for Israel that they took. Um, and you notice I have it spelled with a small l, which means these two are, it was this land that they took, and this is not part of the promised land. This is the land that our Creator gave them. So I don't know how many people actually know where the actual promised land uh, is the dividing, is the Jordan River. Okay, out is a better, so um, and then this wasn't found up there, so this become the next one. He set up these stones. He didn't build up. Like I said, this was the story of laying um not a siege, but what word did I use? I've already forgotten here what I changed here. Blocking isn't actually a building up. It was a setting up to make a blocking. Um, Still not sure about this, if he's a missing prophet. So I've got some checks and doubts on this, but I'm going to say this is the prophet at this time. Struck, stabbed to death. I think stabbing one to kill him is quicker than striking him, because strike somebody with a sword and not really kill them, you can injure them bad, but to cause death, it's this stabbing. Now, when you get many uh, cuts from a sword, then yes, you're getting weaker, and then come over and um, s- slit your throat with a sword. So, because I'm thinking that's how it was done on the battlefield. Yeah, his father had to put him. I couldn't use the word his here. I realized that I missed those two major words in a verse. Uh, Sometimes when I'm editing it, when you look at some of the text and you see how many changes I made within that to start building it up to carry it forward, and then probably made more changes, that I got carried away or didn't do a good enough job there. Walled city, not just a city that he built, because Samaria is going to be a capital city like Jerusalem. I needed a walled because the stories are going to pretty much say it's walled, but it's walled by wood, more like a fort, but it is a walled city. See, I got rid of some text. I'm going to move this down. I'm going to do a lot with this text. Move this up, move that down. So, and then this here, I'm going to move. So this is all got to be redone. So like when I said, when I put this text together in order, and I said, okay, I'll go through it and I'll read it. And then I realized, well, I better put these other things in here and not say I moved them and erased them. And then that's how, when it gets cleaned up and I've moved everything out and around it, I've got all this still got to be moved because I moved everything. Yeah, it was kind of, it was a nice puzzle. It was, uh, I'm just hoping that when you see it and read it, that you're not going to find like, well, this doesn't read right. This shouldn't be here. I really tried to do my best. Uh, it's getting rid of this. Oh, this is how the king died. Uh, but up here he's diseased in his feet as well. So it's kind of like a double being said. So, because this was wrote before this, if you look in the book. Oh, this was 2 Chronicles. This was 1 Kings. So yeah, that's what happened, was the doubling of the text. And this will be the last text, by the way, that has all these, where these books were located. Because the next book is going to just have these to follow. So I try to put as many as I could back into the text, that if you're searching, well, this is to go back to search for the book. And then this is to follow it forward, where did it end up and how does it read from there. So this is going to be a very important book to keep track of. So how I ordered things. I don't know why these are yellow, except for that I was leaving that as notes for me later. That's the way I'm seeing that. It's not that I did anything with the text. I guess I wanted to make sure everything was correct later, after I cleaned everything up, as you can see. Asherim is a goddess, so a name for a goddess. They have actually 3 names for the goddesses in the moon. And for those of you who don't know, um, there's 3 different times you can meditate inside one moon month to have this with a female goddess. And that's just, I call it a sex with a so-called goddess. But that's why I've changed this. I'm trying to make sure that her same name is used all the time. Picked one. I put in all this text here, trying to match this text together. This, I had to make sure that we understand what king this is now being tied to, because you can see that up here we have Ahab, and down here Ahab's were camped in Ramoth, not this city here. I already made maps earlier from our Creator's Hidden Formats, so this was the city that came out through that text, and that will be on the map when it comes out. And I have to make sure the right kings were in, so this was a king, that this guy here was the one that I think started after he come out of Egypt, went back up there and became the king. First he was a marauder, and then or he left Edom and went out farther to rule. This would be his first son, I believe. That would be all King's timeline map, to keep track of all the kings and where they're coming from. So there'll be a little excerpt from that. Divide up the King's timeline and stick just that text in. And after you get used to it, you'll know that where to go look for it. Because King's timeline, I think, is going to be added extra in the book when it's printed. I want to make sure the text is there, but they're going to have to be in pieces there. Then I'm going to need it located somewhere. I don't know if it's going to try to make the book not proper English. I'm going to try to get to the text right off the bat. And then I'm going to try to have a book made with it. You put these bookmarkers or tags. Some people might have seen that. A few Bibles come out like that. These will be major bookmarks that when you're gonna say, well, I want to look for something. I go back here, I'll see this. And I'm actually going to have numbers over off to the side here of the group. So that way it'll help other than just say, when we're going to study starting at number 2,350. And then you can just thumb through the book to see the numbers and get there. And I feel that's going to be the way that the text would be easy enough to teach from. I needed the name of the city that they're going to, uh, so that it wasn't just their army. Gather yours from Samara. They're going to go out and battle, but they're a smaller group. I believe that's the story here. Uh, that our creator is going to chase away thousands from 100. Okay, I believe that's the story here. I added his name here this time. That should have been just checking to make sure if I have it. Yeah, I was. The stories get jumbled up, and I'm thinking this is a note for later when I was putting it together to make sure that I've got the right prophet at the right time. I'm trying to train Ahab. Now, Ahab was a good king and he was a bad king at the same time. It was Elijah that was going to uh, challenge his priests and diviners to call upon their God, and well, Elijah poured water on and then just called to our Creator, and fire came down, and then Ahab become a good king. So that's the way I labeled the difference. When they're small letters, they're bad, and when they're good. And the story had to go not with this king, but this king. This king comes like, I think, 100 years later, maybe 80 years, yeah, a few kings later. I changed it to a water pot until skins I'm thinking would have been early on in like of Noah's day, because they didn't have multiple people. And you got to remember that our creator didn't wipe out everybody, so they were still coming through the land of Noah to trade with Egypt. And so the thing here is that they would have seen some of these things, um, and then they would have developed those items. So, or bought or traded with them. So I thought at this time, it's about time I get rid of the word skins and put in pots. Uh, Trying to, get a flow of history of things when they did change. I might be on a stretch there, but moved, awoke. Uh, I just wanted to make sure he was awake so he could give him to his mother. Like I said, once I changed that king up above, I needed to change it here. Our current speaking, so he's still a bad king here in this area here. Changed it from the sun god Ra to the goddess. I guess I will go over, maybe I should go over right now in case somebody actually watches this one and kind of like, okay, I don't have to go find it in another video that he said it. Ra was considered the sun god. The moon was his daughter, moon goddesses. And then it would have been like all the other planets, they were roaming around, so they gave them special cases to be different gods. Like how these, example, Mars, they named the war god because every 2 years, the I think Mars is closer to Earth by the way the two orbits line up. And when it gets closer, what they did is they noticed there was more fightings going on. You can tell that in the hospitals today that when the new moon is, they're expecting more casualties and more fighting when it gets to that height of a moon. But very few people are aware of every 2 years this making things more active. So they knew that these planets still were playing on our emotions. So that's why they named them gods. And this would have been the Roman gods. You can tie that with things that do happen on Earth as well and affects us as well personally. So, hmm. So when I was saying Raz, you had to understand all that. Well, I just wanted to make sure it was worshiping just their goddess, not all of them. There's other verses that will talk about to all the gods in heaven, I believe is the words that I've left there, or made sure that were there in that understanding of that text. Um, Added the word witness. This would have been just a verse or a line that I would have drawn. Yeah, so diviners become seers. Diviners, I've got casting items and then trying to read them. And then seers are those that are saying, I got a vision. Okay. Yeah, there was no voice. I'd left that in a long time, and I finally said no. It's about the proposal of Elijah that when he came to the king, do this, and whoever sends down fire from heaven. So, and they didn't leap about; they had to be calling out for fire. Okay, because leaping about didn't mean nothing as far as that goes, but they would have been going around calling out to a false god, false creator. So here I've got from pitchers to pot of water. Um, I wanted it larger. He filled 2 pots of water. So these just weren't something simple because the water flowed around the altar. So there's just there's 12 stones. I used the word runner. This is a little bit too far away, but still I didn't want to make it gray text. Yeah. And I haven't done a spell check on this, so I think this is supposed to be Sears. These are pretty much mankind that saying that they can meditate and have visions. So that's another tie to the closer tie to knowing that it's mankind. And this is why our creator uh, actually killed them and sent them off into captivity. Mm. It's because the text, when I was looking for how many years the king ruled, when I put it all together, it was missing. So I had to put that there. Because when you look at my king's timeline, you're going to say, boy, how do you do this? And then when you start figuring out that these guys had to exist at this time in his life, and it's not actually the number of years, that you're going to say, okay, well, yeah, it has to be 30 years. reframe, well, or will I don't think I'm not understanding. I can't remember the exact story, what's going on. I know there's two kings. This is the king for Judah going up and trying to talk about that city in Gad. So here is probably that verse that I know that was there before. And I didn't put Gad because I think Gad appeared differently in that book. And East Manasseh, I had to put that in to because the story above East Manasseh was supposed to be returned to them, and he didn't. And now he's coming back. And he's trying to take Gad. Some text. I think it's a double of everything that I got. Putting the story together. Come extra. It was passed. It's Herald. They had runners to go around and do these, so they'd come in and herald, and that's why I'm using the word herald. They would first run and tell the most important part, and then they would be heralding from time to time, like in the markets and stuff, for them to spread, and then off to the next place. So, and then those runners would go out as to go where you going to tell, and that's how it was built. They had more than one runner. They had runners for every city, probably multiple of them, uh, just to understand the way of life back then. Another group of text that's not needed. It was really just a choice of the words of which one I wanted. That's into the above story. So I made a lot of changes to make sure that this read better this way instead of in the site of YV in YV's site. So I think that's just more truthful. But I think there's like 8 of them that I had to change for that way. Violence was actually evilness. These things are against the commandments. So anything against the commandments is evilness. Uh, harming each other is violence, or I know that I gotta make a graduate showing the different meanings of the words. So I'm thinking you can get that when you start reading the text when I'm using the word evilness, but I think I still need to make a note readers note the future for people that are new to the text. These pieces, pieces. So even though the chapters are there, with them different parts of that chapter, sure acted righteously, not done righteously, acted because when you act righteously, you're actually being like people would look at you that that's how a righteous person lives. So the acts that you do, people will always be examining. I mean, I got 20 examined for 28 years of what I would say, what I would do. So I made sure that it was acted righteously. I'm not the righteous person, but I try to obey all the commandments and try to stay truthful to the laws and guidances for my life to make sure that I enter into heaven. Uh, this would have been something I had to correct later because the timelines were not, I didn't correct them until now. It's just that I put that work off. I got the word out here. Still got questions to myself whether it's this king or that king, and I corrected it later. But here's his third son now, and then this is going to be his son here. And I changed it from this name to here because this name is used again in different places, and it was his son, but I had to correct it because this guy only shows up, I think, in a few verses. This guy would have been the following the lineage of the father to son type of thing. They used like this to make sure that they knew that they're from the lineage uh, until here. Uh, should I added Hazel had dad, had dad, I did. Um, you can see I'm already okay. This means that they were either in a 4 verse and I made them a 3 verse, which I think that's what's going on. To get to this, somewhere I made a mistake and had them 4 so now I got them all 3 verses, yeah. So that's what happened here, that I did a lot of trying to make the format. So it's food in your house, not items, because that would be stools, tables, stuff like that. And that one isn't the intent of what he's asking her. He's hungry. Yeah, these because that's what mankind's seer that he's referring to, our creator's referring to. So I couldn't say that it's actually a creator. This would have been where it would, I think maybe the word that originally would have been there, gods, a false god type of thing. Changed all words, Hebrew words that were, it was for Elohim, to the title creator, because of in Genesis, he was creating. So I said, it makes sense for a creator. And I did take and look at, I pulled out all 1,000 Elohim, rid of the choice thing. Let's say, can I use creator? And things read better than one, and they did. So that's how I got to the word creator. So I was replacing the word God here. decide, no, male, is our creator speaking. Same thing here, had to repeat it. Change the king's name to make sure the timeline, and I know I got to edit this correctly now on the timeline. So for now, I'm doing all this, and then I've already got all cleaned up, got got this all done. I just need to post this before uh, what I did was make my John, and I put it in order in the text. I'm going through that right now. I think I'm on the last page today as I'm making this video. And then that's so you can, let me show you here. Yeah, I've got all the verses yet here where I pulled them to mesh it together. And page 44, and I got 45, but I think 45 is just I got them as 20-inch long pages, by the way, so you don't have that many line breaks when I put it into a PDF. That's as long as they'll let me make a page. It gets confusing when you're reading to see that there's a break in the text. See, like this. So I'm going to try to move this up and down when I do the final book when it comes out. So it's easier at only doing it every 20 pages. Or 20 inches, excuse me. Okay, I've come up to this timeline here of my time for a video. So I have to cut it now, and I will get back with part 7, I believe, probably tomorrow. I'm trying to do 3 a day, so I believe this is number 6. But I'll save right here and in this video. And I know I'm supposed to let it run a little bit because I don't know whether they're going to put an advertisement on top of this, or I don't know if I got mine defaulted. I haven't looked because I know I've got to redo all these to have that ending that as the next video you can just click on.